Pretty much everyone is deficient in a variety of nutrients, and for women, there are certain nutrients that it's really important for us to be intentional about. It's just hard to know where to start when there are 1,000 options. So I invited a functional nutritionist on to bring some clarity. Chelsie Moore is passionate about helping women, and she guides us through the key nutrients that every woman needs. I love the stories she shares about how when women get serious about their nutrition, it literally changes their life. She's also offering a freebie for each of you, which I've put in the show notes. So check that out after you give this a listen. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Meredith. I've led my family on a transformative health journey for over a decade, and now I help other families do the same. So this is a place where you can learn about healthy living and take the next step in your wellness journey. Hey, Daily Wellness listeners, have you ever wished for specific guided help with your health journey? Maybe you need someone to teach you about menu planning or how to get your whole family on board with healthy eating. Maybe you need recommendations for non-toxic cleaning and personal care products so that you can finally make the switch. Now, you and I can chat one-on-one about whatever health topic you'd like. For more details and to schedule, go to dailywellnesscommunity.com/coaching. Now back to the episode. Chelsie, thanks for joining the Daily Wellness Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I asked you to come on here, even though I feel like we could talk about a million different things, to specifically talk about the nutrients that every woman needs. Because I feel like as women, especially if you're on social media, then you're just having people tell you, you need this, you need this, you need this. And I know you've worked with tons of women and that you love nutrition, which I also love. And so I just thought this would be a great thing to get clarity on for the women listening. But before we dive into that, could you introduce yourself and kind of tell us why you do what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Chelsie Moore. I am a functional medicine nutritionist, and I got into this work because of my own story, and I think that's very common. So I actually grew up racing motocross. I lived a very masculine, fast-paced life throughout my teenage years and into my early 20s. I ended up going to school, getting a degree in marketing, and then I became a high-level executive in management for Red Bull, and I actually was working in sports marketing, and I had that job by the time I was like 23, so I was really young and living a very fast-paced life, and it lasted maybe a year or two before the wheels fell off the wagon. And I was forced to kind of look at my lifestyle and be like, oh my goodness, like I can't live like this anymore. And so I ended up quitting my job. I took a year sabbatical to just kind of try and find myself. I was not like sleeping well. I feel like my anxiety was through the roof. I just didn't know who I was when I looked in the mirror anymore. And my health just was totally tanking. And so after a year, I ended up really and I've always been fascinated with nutrition, but living a fast-paced life kind of went out the window a little bit. But I went back to kind of some of those things that I was passionate about. I ended up going back to school, getting my master's degree in clinical nutrition and integrative healthcare. And I spent, 4 years getting that education and then doing all of my clinical hours and doing advanced trainings and mental health and all of these various things. And I just really found my passion. And that whole process also helped me to kind of heal myself and come back to myself. And so I did that for, several years. And my focus really mainly was mental health and concussions. I've had a lot of concussions from riding dirt bikes. And so I just became very fascinated in supporting people who've had brain injuries and mild concussions. And then I got pregnant and I became a mother. And it opened up a whole new world. And that's why I love my profession, because it's endless in terms of all the things that you can learn and the directions that you can go. And becoming a mom just made me really passionate about working with women, because I think women are underserved in a lot of aspects of our world. And
Yes,
it
for sure.
became very apparent to me during the pregnancy and childbirthing experience. When you think about how many babies are born every day, it's baffling how poor the care is for women. And so I just really became passionate about supporting women. I think women are superheroes and, not just moms, like all women are. I think we're up against, we're up against a lot as women in this world and particularly our country. And so I love what I do.
Yeah. And thinking about the nutrients that every woman needs, I kind of like to maybe back up a little bit and start with where we are right now as far as our food culture in America. Like, what are your thoughts on the typical American diet and how that's affecting women?
Yeah, so we called the American diet the sad diet, the standard American diet, and it is actually quite sad. Unfortunately, I think for convenience purposes and cost purposes in our country, we've started to rely really heavily on ultra processed foods. And I want to give a little bit of a differentiation between what processed versus ultra processed foods are, because it can get really confusing for a lot of people. But in general, the standard American diet has created the scenario where no one is getting enough fiber in their diet. No one is eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables because it takes a little bit of time to prep those foods. And we're tasked with doing so much just to keep up with our fast-paced world that a lot of people don't have time to be meal prepping. And I don't fault anyone for this. I think we're in a broken system. However, there are some easy ways to start prioritizing how you cook for yourself or for your family that is quick and can also be cost effective. But again, without the knowledge, we don't, nutrition is barely taught in school. So people don't really understand, and they're marketed to by these billion-dollar companies that lead them to believe that they can eat this stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah, you have a background in marketing, so that's probably
exactly
interesting to you.
It is. Unfortunately, the apple doesn't have a lot of marketing dollars behind it, and neither does spinach. You're not going to see a broccoli advertisement on any podcast or TV show because broccoli doesn't have a lot of money for marketing. So that's just one thing. I think the major piece for me is how low in fiber it is and how no one is getting enough fruits, not just fiber from fruits and vegetables, but phytonutrients and antioxidants from fruits and vegetables. And as a result of that, our gut microbiomes have gotten completely decimated. And the diversity that we're seeing in people's guts is nowhere near where it used to be, which again kind of fuels this cycle of chronic disease that we're seeing in our country. So I think the standard American diet is leading to increasing numbers of chronic disease that we're seeing. And it's a matter of figuring out, how can we make food both affordable and nutritious and convenient for people. And I think that's the battle that we're currently fighting. Going back to fiber, I think the statistic was only 3% of the population is hitting their fiber requirement. That's baffling. Women need about 25 grams of fiber and men need more, and we're just not getting it. And the last point I want to make, just to circle back to the processed and unprocessed foods, there's so much, nutrition talk out there about how bad processed foods are. And I just want to make a distinction because I think a lot of people don't understand that there is a difference between processed versus ultra processed foods. And there are some processed foods that are actually good for you. So an ultra processed food is a food that is going to be something like an artificial color, artificial flavoring. So something that's totally synthetic, fast food. So it's processed food that is made from processed food. So it's just a lot more processing. Refined sugars would be considered more of an ultra processed food. Refined wheat products like, white bread or pastries, candies, some pre-made freezer meals, not all, but some, the cheap pizzas, frozen pizzas, sodas, things like that are going to be your ultra processed foods, cereal, sugary cereals. But there are some processed foods that actually can be nutritious for us. And that includes things like nut butters. Almond butter is a great choice. There's also nutso nut butter, which has a blend of nuts and seeds. That's technically processed, but it's not ultra processed. So that's the distinction there. Kefir, yogurt, kimchi, fermented foods, there's processing that goes into those, but it's not ultra processing. And frozen fruits and vegetables, there's some pastas that have minimal processing, but they're still a little bit processed, and some protein bars that are very much whole food based, but there is some processing that goes into it. So that's a little bit of a distinction. I'm talking here mostly about ultra processed foods being the problem.
Yes, that is a great clarification, because I am guilty of just saying, stay away from processed foods. And in my head, I'm thinking ultra processed foods, but you're right, that does get kind of confusing. So thanks for that clarification. And then I just am thinking about the sad state of the American diet with that fast-paced lifestyle that you mentioned in your own story, and just kind of going through, why we eat the way we do. Just a recipe for disaster in our health.
Yeah. It definitely is.
So what do you think, like, if a woman is really wanting to do better in her health, like, what are the real key nutrients that she should be looking for and trying to get into her diet every day?
Yeah. So the short answer to that is all of them. We've got a list of nutrients, and that I'll use nutrients to include vitamins and minerals, and also phytonutrients, and some of the plant compounds that come from the color pigments in foods. All of those I would kind of box into what women need in terms of nutrients. So you've got your B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, iodine, like all of the standard vitamins and minerals like magnesium and calcium, etc. There's also trace minerals that people aren't very aware of that are also important. I think trace minerals used to be a lot more prevalent in our water supply, but because our water supply is so bad, a lot of people are filtering their water, which is great. I filter my water, but I add back minerals into my water. So a lot of people aren't getting enough trace minerals into their diet. And also, again, like the plant compounds that are great for your microbiome and for helping to lower inflammation, and antioxidants, the phytonutrients that you get from your food, polyphenols, etc. All of it is really important. But if I were to focus on the specific nutrients that I think women are really lacking in, or potentially just need to stay up on, I look at things like iron, magnesium, calcium, vitamin D, omega-3s. That's another nutrient that I didn't even touch on, choline. And I want to dive into these a little bit more to give you some more background on them. Iron, for example, low iron makes it really hard for the body to thermoregulate and to pay attention and focus. If you're low in iron, it's going to cause muscle weakness, fatigue. Mental tasks can feel really hard. You'll chronically feel fatigued. If you are a regular exerciser, you might just not have the endurance that you usually have. And it's really important for pregnant and menstruating women. A lot of people that I work with are low in iron and they don't realize it. So iron is something that I'm constantly addressing, especially during pregnancy and postpartum. Most women go into iron depletion. I think the statistic is about 10% of women ages 12 to 49. So most in the menstruating age category are iron deficient. The RDA for iron is 18 milligrams a day, just to give you a little bit of information, and 27 milligrams per day while you're pregnant. So it significantly jumps up during pregnancy. And then when you enter menopause, it goes down to 8 milligrams a day. So it just really kind of shows how important it is when you're menstruating to make sure that you check into your iron. Another important nutrient is folate, and that's particularly for women that are of childbearing age that could or are trying to get pregnant. Folate is just so important for fetal development. And a lot of people aren't getting enough folate because they aren't eating a lot of greens every day. So the dietary folate requirement is going to be about 400 to 800 milligrams of folic acid equivalents. So again, we could go into a whole tangent about folic acid versus methylated folate, and I definitely recommend methylated folate, but a lot of, foods are fortified with or enriched with folic acid. But we need a good amount of folate for pregnancy and just fetal development. Some other nutrients that I think are pretty key and crucial for women specifically that I think we aren't getting enough of is, magnesium is another really important one. Our soils are just really depleted of nutrients, unfortunately, and it's just due to agricultural practices in the United States. And a lot of our magnesium used to come from foods that were grown in the ground, and the foods don't have as much magnesium as they used to. So 80% of people are low in magnesium, which is pretty high. So that's something I'm constantly looking at to try to optimize.
Could you say, like, what does being low in magnesium feel like? Like, are there certain symptoms that kind of come from that?
So magnesium is involved in so many processes in the body. So it could be so many different things, right? Magnesium plays a role in a lot of cognitive processes. It plays a role in a lot of muscular processes. So it can manifest as like sore muscles. Like your muscles could feel pretty fatigued. You could feel cognitively fatigued. A lot of times when people take magnesium, they report that it really helps to calm their mind down and help with sleep, and also help to calm their muscles down. So if those are constant things that you are battling against, I would say those are pretty common indicators to me that there might be a magnesium deficiency.
Yeah. Okay.
And vitamin D also plays a role in a lot of the same things. And again, a lot of people I see are running vitamin D levels in the 30s, and I'm trying to get them up to 50 to 80 would be optimal. So especially if you live above the equator, you're likely vitamin D deficient. And a lot of people that are closer to the equator still might be vitamin D deficient. We just are creatures of our houses these days, and a lot of people aren't getting enough sunshine, especially in the winter months. So, making sure that you're getting enough vitamin D is so important. And that's across a whole lifespan. It plays a role in so many things, mental health being one key thing. Omega-3s, super important during pregnancy and for nursing women. Omega-3s are something that I generally recommend everyone take just because a lot of people don't eat enough fish throughout the week.
Not getting enough healthy fat. And
exactly.
Really important. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't like your cell walls are like made up of partially fat, right? So you need that.
Yeah, your cell wall is made up predominantly of fat. And so within your cell wall is where all of these communicating messengers are able to dock and communicate with each other. So your cells need a strong integrity to the structure of the wall in order for communication to happen effectively throughout your body. So that includes how hormones communicate with each other, how neurons communicate with each other. It's everything. It's so important. And inflammatory markers are generally a lot higher too if someone is low on the omega-3 index. You want to be around 8% on the omega-3 index. So if you're curious what your omega-3 to omega-6 ratios are, you can have an omega-3 index done, and you want to be around 8%. That's kind of the target.
Yeah. So you're listening up, women, because I know a lot of people will tell you, or you'll get this idea in your mind that, you don't want to eat fat, right?
Yeah.
I think women especially struggle with that, thinking of trying to maintain weight or whatever and thinking that they need to reduce fat in their diet. But there's good, healthy fat that we really need. So I just want to Make sure everyone's listening right now.
Yeah, and there's a difference. There's a difference between all of the different kinds of fats. There's fats like olive oil and avocados, coconut oil, coconut, pure olives, nuts and seeds, fish, wild caught fish. All of those are amazing fats for you to get. Ghee, I love ghee. I cook with ghee regularly. And I'm also a fan of, full fat yogurt, kefir. The fats that you're going to get from that are all super nutrient dense or super nutritious for every aspect of your functioning. I think we've just become such a fat phobic culture, and for good reason, because there's a lot of inflammatory fats like omega-6s that come from seed oils. And, if you're getting a lot of saturated fat regularly from a ton of red meat consumption, that can also be detrimental to certain people's health. But in general, you want to be getting a lot of these healthy fats in your diet throughout the day. Yes, especially for women. It's so important for hormone production.
Building bones.
Yeah, for sure. And let me just, a couple more nutrients that I wanted to touch on that are really important for women. One is choline. Choline isn't talked about that often. Choline is super important for, again, pregnant and nursing women, but also women throughout their lifespan. It's really essential for liver, muscular, and neurological functions, lipid metabolism as well, and cellular membrane, the composition of cell walls, like we talked about. Choline kind of goes hand in hand with the omega-3s and the healthy fats, and it really helps with cellular membrane repair and regeneration of cell membranes. It should be in all prenatal vitamins, and I think it should be in all women's vitamins as well, just because it's so important. But you don't see it that often in vitamin and mineral complexes, unfortunately. So I typically look for choline if I'm analyzing someone's prenatal vitamins. I like to see about 400 milligrams of choline in there. Choline's really rich in egg yolks. So if you're trying to get choline from your diet, I recommend eating, 3 eggs will give you the amount of choline that you need in a day. And it's most bioavailable when the egg yolk is runny. So that's a little fun fact. It's good to eat
interesting. Okay.
runny egg yolks. When the yolk is fully cooked, it makes the choline a lot less bioavailable. So yeah, that's choline. Iodine is the last one that I wanted to touch on. And again, it's really important for women hoping or trying to get pregnant. So at any point during your childbearing ages, it's so crucial for fetal brain development. And again, so many people are iodine deficient. And I think this has come about because we used to eat iodized sea salt or iodized salt, and so many people have switched over to sea salt, which is great. I cook with Celtic sea salt. I love Celtic sea salt. That's pretty much all that I use, but I'm getting my iodine from other sources. And a lot of people don't realize that when you switch over to these other less processed salts, which is great, you're not getting the iodine that was in the iodized salt. And the reason that the government put iodine in salt is because no one was getting enough iodine. And now that we've switched salts, people aren't getting enough iodine again. So it's actually becoming a pretty big problem in this country. About only 17% of pregnant women are using a prenatal vitamin that has iodine in it. And because it's so important for fetal brain development, who's to say like how much that might be playing a role in, cognitive issues we're seeing in kids. So it's something to be really mindful of. You can get a good amount of iodine from kelp. So I use kelp seasoning daily on my food. You can do about 1 teaspoon of kelp seasoning is going to give you the amount of iodine that you need to get throughout the day. So I'm a big proponent of kelp seasoning. Yeah, that's a great iodine source if you weren't getting it in your multivitamin.
Yeah, okay. So we kind of touched on like fat phobia. Are there other nutrition myths that you kind of wish every woman knew the truth about?
Oh gosh. I think, overall, I wish that women understood that there's not one diet that is going to fit all people. nutrition is very much an individualized thing, and that's based on genetics and environment. We didn't, as humans evolved, we, created airplanes and all these things that allowed us to travel to different parts of the world. So before all of that, we lived in certain pockets of the world. And so we ate what was available in those pockets of the world. And as we've evolved as human beings, you're taking that DNA with you. So I think genetically, and there's some research, some people, there's a lot of controversy around this, but some researchers out there believe that certain people, based on their blood type, do best with certain diets. And that goes back through human evolution because they, were on a specific continent where they only had access to certain foods. And so that genome kind of evolved around doing best with the foods that were in that area, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So there is a genetic component to why certain people do best with certain diets. And that's why I think the argument of a vegan diet against an omnivorous diet is a stupid argument to have, because for one person, the vegan diet might actually be a better diet. But for another person, eating meat might be way better for them than being on a vegan diet. And again, this just comes down to one person's medicine can be another person's poison and vice versa. So understanding your body's unique needs, and you could do that through standard blood tests. Like, if you're someone that tends towards elevated cholesterol or elevated blood pressure, you have cardiovascular disease that runs in your family, maybe you need to tone it down a little bit on your meat consumption and saturated fat consumption. And that's where having more plants in your diet can be more beneficial. So overall, nutrition is individualized. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Yeah. There could be, some influencer on social media that is such a big proponent of like a very heavily meat-based diet. And it's like, yeah, great. Good for you. Like, I'm glad you figured out what works for you, but you can't say that that's going to work for everyone.
Right.
Because everyone is different. So
right.
I can
see a woman on Instagram that, had this complete lifestyle, and body transformation from eating a certain way or following a certain diet or whatnot, and, try it for myself and it not work at all. And that happens a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we all need to just be more in tune with our bodies and our own unique needs and not feel like we're failing ourselves or, just failing in general because we're not eating the diet that someone else swears by, because I think we all need different things. So listen to your body and understand what you feel best with when you eat. And there are some foundational things, right? Like, it is pretty widely known that, certain foods are more inflammatory. Again, going back to the ultra processed foods. And so I think if in general we're focusing on whole foods, so like the foods that can't be marketed to you, like whole grains, there's not a quinoa commercial or a broccoli commercial, or just straight up chicken, straight up wild caught fish, lots of greens, lots of fruits and vegetables. If you're eating those kinds of foods that you're not being marketed to, that's the best diet, in my opinion. Whether you're eating grains or not eating grains, or eating beans or not eating beans, I think that's where the individualization comes in. But in general, trying to focus on whole, real foods is super important.
The nutrients that you kind of took us through that you really feel like every woman needs, those are things that women tend to be more deficient in, right?
Yeah.
So just being more intentional about those. And then I'm assuming you're probably like me and really try to get most of your nutrients or all that you can from food, as much as possible. You're talking about a whole foods based diet, and that's part of the benefit of that is that, when you're eating a variety of whole foods, you are going to get a lot of the nutrients that you need from foods. And so even though every woman's body is different and, there's aspects of nutrition that we need to individualize, are there still some recommendations that you can give women on how to build their plate? It's like, we got to have some kind of idea of like, what do I actually put on my plate on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So the way that I help people figure out how to plan their meals and what their meals should look like is I tell them to imagine a dinner plate. or I'll even draw it out for them. So imagine a dinner plate, and I want you to cut the dinner plate in half, and half of that dinner plate should be dedicated to non-starchy vegetables. So that can be salad greens, that can be broccoli, that can be cauliflower, that can be Brussels sprouts, asparagus, anything that is a non-starchy vegetable should be on half of your dinner plate. The other half of your dinner plate, you're going to cut that in half. So a quarter of your dinner plate should be starchy vegetables or whole grains. So it could be sweet potato or beets or squash or quinoa or buckwheat, wild rice. Those are all great whole grains. So that's about a quarter of your plate. The last quarter of your plate should be protein. So a complete protein source. That doesn't have to be meat. It could be tempeh. It could be a really good quality organic tofu. It could be pastured meats such as beef or bison. I'm more of a bison fan than I am a beef fan, just from a sustainability and quality standpoint. But you can get good quality beef as well. Chicken, poultry, wild caught fish, eggs, those are all going to be complete protein sources. And then I always recommend getting about a tablespoon of a healthy fat at least. So that could be olive oil on your vegetables. That could be, ghee on your vegetables.
Right.
You could also put some avocado on a salad, and that could be a good fat source. So again, just to give you a summary of that, half your dinner plate should be non-starchy vegetables. A quarter of your dinner plate should be a starchy vegetable or a whole grain. And then the last quarter should be a complete protein with 1 tablespoon of a fat source.
Yeah.
That's just kind of a good way to envision what a healthy plate looks like.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's super helpful. It doesn't look like, the meal that you get at a fast food restaurant. So
no, for sure.
And cooking for ourselves at home, we need to reimagine things.
When you envision that, it just, it's going to optimize the amount of fiber that you're getting. Again, and that's how much fiber you should be getting for the optimal health of your gut. So if you're able to kind of hit that target with 80% of your meals, you're setting yourself up for a much healthier microbiome and health in general. You're going to be getting a lot more nutrients in your diet. So
yeah, true. All right. So knowing that we're trying to get most of our nutrients from food, but that we're probably not actually going to get all the nutrients we really need, like what supplements would you recommend women be taking?
Yeah, so I do recommend women take supplements, and this just comes down to the fact that I haven't worked with a single person that isn't deficient in something. So, and again, our soil just is so depleted of nutrients. So it's very challenging for a lot of people to get the amount of nutrients that they need in a day. So if I were to recommend just a good foundational supplement plan for people, it would be a comprehensive multivitamin that has vitamin D in it, with all of the nutrients that we discussed previously, making sure that those are in it, especially if you are thinking about getting pregnant or trying to get pregnant. I recommend an omega-3 supplement. The specific omega-3 I recommend is actually different for different people based on what they're coming to me for, what their blood work looks like. So that's also very individualized. I recommend a magnesium supplement. And typically lately I've been recommending NAC or N-acetylcysteine, and that's something that's very supportive of liver health and detoxification. Just because we live in an increasingly toxic world, and having extra antioxidant support for the liver to help clear those toxins is really, really important.
Yeah.
I have my own foundational supplement strategy that I follow, and I take my foundational stuff daily, and then I'm cycling stuff in every month. I'm changing the other half of my supplement protocol based on how I'm feeling. And it just, again, it comes down to self-awareness and learning about my body over time.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Yeah.
What have you seen nutrition do for some of the women that you've been helping? I mean, Can you share a couple of stories of
Yeah.
what you've
So
seen when women get serious about their nutrition?
I've seen amazing, amazing things. I have worked with some women that, and just to go back to some of my brain injury days of when I was predominantly working with women that had, a brain injury, I've watched some women go from being bedridden and completely non-functional to totally changing their diet, helping their brain to heal, and going back to school and getting a master's degree and then getting their dream job. I've seen in the women's healthcare space, I've watched women go from struggling to try to get pregnant to being able to get pregnant and creating a family because they were able to optimize the nutrients that they have in their body and lower their inflammation and just help their body to get overall to a healthier place. I think the foods that we put into our bodies are pretty much the main thing, obviously aside from stress and lifestyle and all of that, but food is one of the main things that is going to ultimately lead to the outcome of how our body is functioning. Our body is literally built from the food that we eat. And, having become a mother, I've literally watched that. I've watched a child evolve out of nothing except for what I'm putting into my body and what I'm feeding her, and to see it in front of my eyes is just a testament of what we put into our bodies, both from a food and content and what we're absorbing from the world, is going to lead to how our bodies and our brains are functioning. It's everything. It's everything. I've seen it take people out of the darkest, deepest despairs of depression and give them their lives back. And that is the most rewarding thing to witness.
Yeah. That's a really beautiful way to wrap it up. I think that a lot of women are going to listen and just get a lot of hope from this, knowing that there are things within their control, that they can do with their forks to really change their health outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important.
Can I give you 3 fun questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
What is your favorite way to de-stress?
My favorite way to de-stress is to put my phone on airplane mode and put it away. That's kind of first and foremost, to just detox off of my cell phone and to go outside with my daughter and walk around. She's only 1.5, and seeing the world through her eyes is such a cool thing to witness. So if you can check out from the chitter chatter of the rest of the world and really check into what's right in front of you, whether it's your kids or your dog or a walk by yourself, it just can really change your perspective and help you get your feet on the ground. So that's one thing, walking around and showing her the trees and just reminding myself of how magical and mysterious this world is so cool. And I also really love sitting down by myself and reading books. I'm a total book nerd, so books for me have been really relaxing. I get monthly massages. That's one my main self-care practice is once a month I go and get a massage. I'm pretty sure massage is one of my love languages. Yes. I think for a lot of women, getting massages their love language. So, giving yourself that gift is amazing. Something I do regularly. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then what's your go-to morning drink?
So every morning when I wake up, I take chlorella on an empty stomach. I take it every day. It's just a really good binder to help remove heavy metals and other toxins that are in your GI tract. And then I drink 8 ounces of water with an electrolyte. So I use the it's just like a liquid, pure, there's nothing in it except for electrolytes. And then I also put a little bit of ionic liquid trace minerals in it. So first thing every morning, I drink 8 ounces of water with a little bit of liquid electrolytes and some liquid ionic trace minerals in it.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
Yeah, I feel so much better when I do because, here's the thing, our brains detoxify when we sleep. And so when you wake up in the morning, your brain's just kind of done this massive flush out, and then you replenish with electrolytes and trace minerals, and it just feels like a bath for my brain.
Love it. That's a great recommendation.
Yeah.
Last question is, who would you love to see as a guest on the Daily Wellness Podcast?
Oh gosh, there's so many people that are amazing. I love Aviva Romm. She's one of my favorite doctors out there. So if you could get her on your podcast, I think that's
okay. Awesome. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
Thanks again for your time. Thanks for doing what you're doing, helping so many people, sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this podcast and having me on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.